After this video, you may look at suffering very differently than you're looking at it now, and so maybe your attempts to end it or avoid it will also change. So have you ever heard someone brag about how they don't really suffer or have any problems? It's like almost a modern badge of honor, right up there with owning the latest smartphone or having the least amount of sleep. But beneath this shiny, sleep-deprived shield, there is often a storm raging. Well, we're often blissfully unaware of how our hidden self-identities wreak havoc in our lives, keeping us alienated and marinated in suffering. Most people imagine suffering as this unbearable grief or going through some extreme trauma or losing a loved one or facing some devastating illness or any kind of life-shattering event. And yes, these can be profound forms of suffering, but we don't really know until we take a closer look at what we believe underneath. I've witnessed my clients going through divorces, terminal illness, or losing a child with emotional pain, but without suffering, because they have connected to their core selves. And so, what exactly is suffering? What is it? Suffering is simply enduring situations or relationships, settling for less than we deserve, and putting up with things and people because we believe we have no other choice. This isn't just about some big life events. It's the daily compromise that chip away at our well-being. And living this way, we find ourselves on this mental merry-go-round. On one side, we feel superior, looking down at those who don't have their shit together. And yet, in the quiet corners of our homes, we battle this relentless inner critic. This tyrant whispers that we are never good enough, or we are not doing enough or having enough. It's like having this harsh drill sergeant living in our head, barking orders and criticisms. This is the daily reality of suffering. It's not so dramatic. It's dreadfully mundane. Imagine scrolling through social media and seeing all these curated life, and see behind every of these perfect selfie, there is a narrative of insecurity, and we are comparing ourselves to this image. And of course, that leads to constant dissatisfaction. But here is the gut punch. The worst part of suffering isn't even the suffering itself. It's that we normalize it. It becomes just background noise, like a constant hum of a refrigerator. And it's so pervasive that we start mistaking it for silence. We think it's just how it's supposed to be. But that's actually not even the worst part. The real worst part is that we tolerate this low-level suffering because we are afraid of the unknown. We cling to discomfort because it's familiar. We endure thankless jobs and loveless relationships and endless routines because the alternative, change, seems just so terrifying. It's like clinging to a sinking ship because we are scared of open water. Well, now here is how to get out. Suffering is optional. It stems from our reluctance to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves and our lives. We tolerate too much, settle too often, and silence our intuition in exchange for a false sense of security. Imagine you are wearing shoes that are a size too smaller. You've convinced yourself that a little pain is normal, so you endure it day in and day out. But what if you realized that the perfect fit was out there all along, just waiting for you to try it on? It's like when we start to recognize that our suffering is not a given, it is a choice. And breaking free from this cycle isn't about finding a sudden burst of happiness or excitement or a new relationship or a better tomorrow or any one-time solution. It's about gradually becoming aware and dismantling these beliefs and identities that cause us to suffer. It's not about just stepping out of the shadow, but turning off the projector entirely. And now I'm going to leave you with this thought-provoking challenge. What if you stopped tolerating those little annoyances in life? And what would your life look like if you refused to let suffering to be the baseline? And what if the comfort you cling to is the very thing that's keeping you from true freedom? And are you ready to see what lies beyond the story of suffering you've been living?